Oh my God. I am so disappointed. I am so I've been talking this whole time. I've been streaming for 47 minutes and there was a glitch. And the glitch, I'm so mad at myself. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. Oh my God. Oh. Okay. If you're waiting and you're just now joining, I'm so sorry. I started the stream and YouTube did not complete the starting of the stream. So I saw the comments. Mike B said, "Is it broken?" He said I was late, and I'm like, "No, I'm not late." And I've been streaming for almost a whole hour, showing you guys my income, breaking down all of that information, and it was never live. Now, thankfully, oh my God, I'm pissed. Thankfully, it's recorded. So the software I used to record was working. And even though that part of the stream wasn't streamed, you guys are just gonna have to wait until I put the video out for. So I went over my earnings for all of January. I went all over all my expenses and the taxes I would have to pay. And it wasn't streaming, but it was recording. So I'll put that video out tomorrow. It'll be the first video I'll put out. It'll cover how much money I made. Yeah, Colin. Oh no, is right, man. I feel so defeated. I'm so sad, but I am glad that it was recorded. If it wasn't recorded, I'd be pissed. I'd be honestly be pissed instead of just feeling sad. But Mike B, thank you for asking if it's broken. Because if you didn't ask that question, I would have never went to YouTube on my phone to make sure it was working. So now I gotta I'm like I pressed the button and it was just circling. It was just circling on the back end the whole time for the last 40 minutes. And then once I pulled the page back up to see if it was working, then it clicked. So it is what it is. But so yeah, if you guys want to see how much money I made, I'm gonna put that out tomorrow, or maybe I'll edit it tonight because I feel bad. But tomorrow, the latest. I was just about to move on to how much other drivers made. So if you want to uh, suggest a city for me to look at in the Solo app, now's the time to do it. Yeah, I'm already over it. We've all been there, my friend. Thanks, Colin. I'm over it already. I get over things pretty quickly. I'm just gonna move forward and bring up the Solo app. I will say you guys missed out. There's some good stuff in there. You'll have to watch the video tomorrow, but some really good stuff. No thanks. Just pull it up. All right. All right, so this is the Solo app. If you want it, you can get it. It's in the description. We're gonna go to Insights. What I enjoy about the Insight page is that it shows you how much people are averaging in your market. People are averaging $21 with Uber, averaging $15 an hour with DoorDash, which is up somehow. It's low figures here. Lyft is $14 an hour, and the reason I like this page is because I can compare it to what I do. So for example, you can see that, hold on, let me go scroll over. In January, for all of January, I averaged $41.28 per hour before taxes and expenses. And after taxes and expenses, I averaged, zoom in, I averaged $31.13 per hour. So then for me, when I look at the Solo app, I have to switch my brain and ask myself, why are people making $14 an hour if I'm making like double that? So always check in to see what people are making in your city. Let's see what the all metros are. There's no way this is real. So the average is $21 with Uber. The average is $17 with Lyft. Uber Eats is $15. DoorDash is $14. Spark is $28 an hour. That's misleading because Spark doesn't like consider your time back. It only considers your time to drop off. So You want to half that in order to get a more realistic expectation. Amazon Flex is probably accurate. Amazon Flex pays well per hour, but you're not going to get a lot of hours. You're going to get like 3 hours a day. So it's a nice break from delivering people, but the amount of hours you can work is limited. So let's go check out the leaderboard. This is for this week. I haven't driven this week, and this week is Monday, which is today, and I just haven't driven today. So this is last week. I slacked. I didn't work as hard. Ooh, someone in Charleston out there making money. You made $2,005. The runner-up in Charleston made $886, and then the third place made $804. That's pretty good. The 800 ranges have been normal for the last few couple weeks, and Charleston has been slow season for us. We're a tourist city and it's cold, and the students don't go out when it's cold. The tourists don't come when it's cold. So it's nice to see someone out there like hustling outside of myself. Got some competition. Let's check out all metros. So Boston, Massachusetts at the top of the list, $3,154 made last week. You got Tucson, Arizona, $2,565. Los Angeles, people are very vocal about rideshare, $2,554. Naples, Florida, $2,270. Columbia, South Carolina, not too far from here, $2,241. Pretty good. Another person in Los Angeles, $2,200. Chicago, Illinois, $2,192 at rank number 7. Rank number 8 is New York, my hometown, $2,176. At number 9, we have Portland, Oregon, $2,135. And then at number 10, we have Salt Lake City, Utah, $2,132. Wow. The person who made $2,500 in Charleston came in at number 12. So 12 people made over $2,000 on the solo app, right? So only people who have the solo app and connect their accounts will be considered here. So it's very possible more people made more money, but they just don't have this app. So let's see how many people made over $1,500 last week. I'm gonna scroll for a little bit here. So 86 people made over $1,500 last week. Let me know in the comments, how much money would you like to make at minimum? Of course, we're talking gross here. When you see that amount of money made between on your Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, whatever it is, what's that number that makes you feel like you had a good week? Let me know. Jesse B says, please review Vancouver, Canada. So Canada's not available here. I've tried and I've looked before, and I'm like pretty certain it's not here. It's just American places. This is scroll. That's annoying. Yes, I'm pretty sure Canada is just not even an option here. And then it's V. Oh my God, it's all the way at the bottom. I want to double check while I'm scrolling. You guys can hit the like button. That would be awesome. It helps. Oh my God. Okay, if I make a mistake again, I'm not even gonna keep looking. But QRSTUV. Yeah, there's no Vancouver here. There's Van Wert, Valdosta. There's no Vancouver. Sorry, no Canada. I'll message these guys on Twitter to see if there's ever going to be some international support coming anytime soon. Kobe says, hi, just found your channel. Can you check Boston MA? I'm planning to start next week as a full-time driver, but I'm afraid to... I don't know what that says. I'm afraid to not make a something from it. Well, I will tell you this, if you're just tuning in, the number one earner from last week is from Boston. Boston's a pretty good market from what I've seen, especially when it's snowing. Just make sure you're doing it safely. But yeah, I'll pull it up for you. You can do Boston. Boston starts with a B, so I don't have to scroll too much. we got Boston. So this is for this week so far, right? Yeah. So this week started today, Monday. Technically, solo kind of starts like Sunday night, but you already have drivers who've made over $1,000 in Boston in less than a day. They probably got some challenge that got tacked on at Sunday night or something of the sorts, but that's something to keep in mind. But let's go to the last complete week we've had. Something's up here. What's going on? I'm so confused. $1,677. That's not what we just looked at. So we looked at the all metros, Boston MA, $3,154. But why is it that when I go to Boston, that's not what's showing? Is there a different Boston? Maybe I clicked on Boise, Boston, right? This is Boston, right? I'm not tripping. Boston, right? Interesting. Something's up. Something's wrong with these numbers. That's weird. All right, so let's do it one more time so I know I'm not tripping, right? So when we go to all metros, right? This is all metros right here. You click all metros, and let's go to, this is for what, current week? This is for current week, right? February 5th to 11th. All right. We go back 1 week. This guy from Boston, Massachusetts is up here for $3,154. I'm pretty sure there was, see if there's any other Boston people up here, right? There's another Boston right here, $1,677. But when we switch to the Boston market, that's a restaurant. That's why I smiled. I used to eat there all the time on Sundays. When we switch to the Boston market, right? So we scroll down, Boston. This is Boston. I'm not tripping. I'm not making a mistake. This is Boston. It disappears. I don't know what NH is. New Hampshire, maybe? But I don't know. There's something weird going on here. I haven't seen it do that before. So I can't reliably tell you right now that I don't that $3,000 that we saw. I don't know. Should we trust it? I don't know. I don't know what the discrepancy is here. I'm gonna have to clip this and send it to Solo to see what's up. But even if you're just starting, my recommendation to you is to figure out what kind of car do you even have. Tell me what kind of car you have. Tell me what your availability is. Like, don't tell me what hours you want to work. Like, tell me, like, can you realistically work overnights if you had to? Can you do weekends? Like, even though you're going to be transitioning into independent contractor, you could be in one already. But with rideshare, if you want to have great earnings, you're going to have to be willing to work the times where other drivers don't want to work and the times where there's high demand, with the exception of traffic. Like I said, if it snows and you're comfortable driving in the snow, that's going to be a great time to make more money because other potential passengers don't want to walk anywhere, and then other drivers don't want to drive. I have rideshare friends who drive in Boston. They make pretty good money. I think it's a good market up there. So no matter what the numbers say, you as a individual are still gonna have to fill in the gap. You're gonna have to figure out why, so here's an example. I'll use my market as an example. So we'll go to Charleston. Actually, we'll go jobs. Yeah, jobs is what we want. So as you can see, it says the average Uber driver makes $21 in my market. Average Lyft driver makes $17 in my market. But when I show you my spreadsheet, my average after expenses and taxes is $31. So I can give you that information from Boston's perspective, but it's going to be up to you to figure out how to bridge the gap between what you made on your first weekend versus what they made now. Because when I first started Uber and Lyft during the pandemic, when it was easier to make money, I averaged $15 an hour because I didn't know what I was doing. If I had the knowledge that I have now applied to what I was doing back then, I would have made significantly more money. So even if you can see if it's worth it, like, don't judge your first time doing it as whether it's worth it or not. You want to make sure you have a good car that's gas efficient. You want to make sure you're always improving your strategy. So I would say give yourself 40 hours before you even come to a conclusion. And in those 40 hours, you need to be figuring out how to improve your strategy. That's week 1. And then week 2, do another 40 hours and try something different. Like keep trying different things. Don't sit at the airport. Don't sit at the airport. But keep trying different things. It's gonna take you a while to learn your market, where people are partying. I can tell you what's gonna happen Friday night at 8:30. It's gonna be dead. But if you wait around for an hour, it's gonna be extremely busy. Like I know how my market works, like the back of my hand at this point. So you just got to do the research, and the best way to do the research is to do it. And the more you drive, right? You drive 12 hours a day. I bet you'll figure out where and when you should be at certain places. Kobe says, thanks for checking. Yeah, no problem. Might be. He's finally on. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, you probably saw what I said. So it's what it is. It's what it is. We here now. We moving forward. Sean says, hey man, can you look and see Lexington, Kentucky? Appreciate your content. Yeah, of course, man. I'll check out Lexington. It's not too far of a scroll. Go to leaderboard. HIJKL. HJKL. I did forget what city I'm looking for. Lexington. Lexington not looking that great. 797. Usually, I don't know why or when, but usually it shows what app they were using to make their money. It can be hit or miss sometimes. Let me look at my phone real quick to see if it's there, because I have noticed that discrepancy, but I think it's because of how I'm displaying it on my computer why it's doing that. So go to Insights, leaderboard. I'll scroll down to Lexington, we said. Okay, so it's not showing all of them on my phone, but it is showing number 3. So this would be DoorDash. Nope, that's for the wrong week. Let me go back a week. Yeah, so it's not showing on my phone either. Maybe the historical, when you start going back, is when it stops showing what platform they use to make their money. I don't know. Weird stuff. But yeah, I would say it's not that great, but we also don't know how many hours these guys are working. And where is Lexington, Kentucky? I'm going to pull it up on a map. Lexington, Kentucky. Maps. All right, so shirt over here. That's Lexington. So there's Cincinnati's close by. I don't know how far that is. Louisville. How far is Cincinnati from Lexington? Hour 30 minutes. So that is pretty far. I think there might be some value in planning around events. I believe Cincinnati is the bigger city there. So you could, is that across state lines? It is. So you'd have to figure out if you would require more documentation in order to drive in Ohio, right? Is it in Ohio? Maybe it's on the border. So yeah, so figure out if you can drive there, and then they have football teams, sports teams, events. There's probably way more events that happen in Cincinnati, so it might be worth it to figure that out. You might be able to find passengers who routinely go between Lexington and Cincinnati, and then you could stay there and earn more money. So let's look at how much people are making in Cincinnati for a comparison. So they're not, I wouldn't say significantly better, right? A couple $100 more. Um, in the hour and a half, the 3 hour round trip it would take you to go to Cincinnati, you could probably bridge that gap by staying in your town. So you have to play with it. But, if Taylor Swift is going to Cincinnati, it might be worth going there. It's just something you should be keeping in mind. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about Lyft's new bonus structures. They came out with a new bonus plan, and I want to talk about it. So first, I'm going to pull up the email that they sent, and while I'm pulling it up, I'm going to hide it from you guys so you guys don't see my information. Sorry. Give me a second, guys. All right, can't find the email, so we're just gonna go to the website. All right, this is good. All right, so this is the Lyft website. I became aware of their new system February 2nd. They sent me an email. It's called Lyft Elite. So there's now, let's zoom in. Okay, so we have silver. With silver, you get, I'm not gonna go through the words. We have silver, we have gold, we have platinum, and then now we have elite. So let's jump to elite. So to qualify for elite, the amount of points you need will vary by market, and I will show you what that means for my market. So my market points, hold on. All right, so here are the points. I can't really zoom in too much here. For my market, in order for me to get platinum, I need to do 460 points. And the way points work is you accumulate them over the course of a month. And for every dollar that you earn, not including bonuses, you get a point. So if I take $460 worth of rides, not including bonuses, I'll get platinum. But this also does include tips. That's the only saving grace here, is that tips are included. The last time I worked, I made about $200, but I only generated about $100 in points. So I made about $100 in bonuses. I do think it's kind of fair, but it's gonna vary in your market how much you get. And of course, you have to meet the driving score as well. It's 80%. So that means you can decline 20 rides out of every 100 rides and still be okay, as long as your other driving score numbers aren't atrocious. So in order to generate points, you have to drive during specific times of the day. For me, it's usually Thursday into Friday, and then into Saturday, and then a little bit of Sunday. So if I really want to make elite, I need 1,000 points. So that's 540 more points to go from platinum to elite. So is that worth it? I talked about it a little bit earlier when I was by myself, not streaming apparently. But I get 7% cash back with Lyft for gas because I'm a platinum driver. And so I did put that number in here. So you can see where it says Lyft Direct. That's where you get the Lyft debit card, you get 7% cash back. I made $24.29 in January in just cash back. You know, gas is our biggest expense. If you can get something that gives you cash back, I know Uber has a card. It doesn't matter. But to go from platinum to elite, right? So platinum is 7%, elite is 10%. So I think that might be worth it. I have to try it. Right? I'm gonna do my best to obtain elite status so I can give you guys more information. So cash back on gas with Lyft Direct debit card, 10%. Extra daily use of location filters, you get 6 instead of 4. For me, sometimes I have 18-hour days. I don't care how you feel about it. I wake up, I get a good night's rest of sleep. I wake up at 5 a.m. I drive for 12 hours until 5 p.m. I go to sleep for 5 to 6 hours, and then I get up and then I drive 6 hours. It's not that crazy. People hear the 18 hours and then their brain gets weird, but if you haven't ever worked a 12-hour shift somewhere, then your life must be fantastic. But it's not that hard to do every now and then. You don't have to do it every day. But I like to use the area filter, and the area filter only lasts 3 hours. That the area filter allows me to stay within an area for 3 hours, and I can only use 4 per day. So if I can only use it for 3 hours and I only have four times 12, 4 times 3 is 12. So that means I can only use the area filter for 12 hours as a platinum driver. If I get elite status on the days where I really want to push it, I can use up to 6. So now I can use it for up to 18 hours. And even if I don't want to work 18 hours, let's say I just want to work 12 hours, I can now use a destination filter that will take me from my house to the to downtown, right? I live about 20 minutes from downtown. So I can say, all right, let me use this filter to pick up rides that are only going towards my destination. So I can start that. So that's one filter. Now I get downtown and I say, all right, I'm going to work, uh, what, 12 hours now that I'm downtown. So I can use all of my I can use what, 4 destination filters. So that means I've used 5, and then I can use that last destination filter to go from downtown back home. It gives me more tools to be more flexible with what I'm doing, and I think it will be beneficial for me to be an elite driver. You get 24/7 Allstate roadside assistance for free. I've never really used roadside assistance. It's always been faster for me to fix my own flat, but if it was something major, then I would definitely use this. 24/7 phone support. Is that new? Elite status protection. If you are an elite driver, you can, so in order to keep your status, you have to achieve it again in the next month. But with elite status protection, you're allowed to cheat, right? So if there's 1 month out of a 3 month period that you've been an elite driver that you didn't make it, you can use this protection to be an elite driver. So you can take a month off and still maintain your protection once every 3 months. I hope that made sense. If it doesn't make sense, just let me know in the comments and I'll try to clarify. The next one is premium airport pickups. You guys know me. I don't believe in being at the airport. It's not great. But as an elite driver, if I'm not mistaken, it lets you skip the line. It might be by 30 minutes. I'm not 100% sure. We're gonna dig deeper into like making sure I'm not just talking up my ass here. I'm kind of going off of memory, but you can skip the line. I don't know by how much, and you can also get destination filters once you're at the airport. But this is really what I want. This is really why I want to become an elite driver. You get early access to scheduled rides. I used to use an app called Skedi. It's a terrible name. Skeddy. I stopped promoting it because they've been doing a very bad job of updating their app. But what they did very well was they would always be scanning for long rides based off of the criteria I set. So if I said, all right, only find me long rides between the hours of 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. that are no more than 15 miles away from my house and that are going no further than 200 miles away from the pickup, right? So I could set those parameters, and you could even set no rides that are less than $40. And I used to use that to take long rides back when long rides were actually worth it. And I do think that long rides can still be worth it during certain times of the day. For example, I don't drive in Charleston between 9 to 5 typically because of traffic. Traffic gets really bad. If you're stuck in traffic, you're losing money. But if I can get a long distance ride that's taking me out of traffic, and then by the time I get back to town, there is no traffic, I'll do it. They tip very well sometimes. It can be a gamble on the tip, but typically I'll do it. And I like driving. I always enjoy the drive back by myself. It's a different experience. Even if the person's in the back of the seat snoring, I drive differently when someone's in the car whose life is in my hands versus me. When I'm driving by myself, I can be alone with my thoughts and just coast. So I do enjoy long drives, and I do miss them because the app hasn't been working as it should. Now, the app is working. I still am not getting longer rides, but if I lower my threshold, I will get shorter rides. So the app is working. But I really want to test if the reason why I'm not getting long rides through Skedi is because I'm not an elite driver. So this used to be Platinum Plus. There's no more Platinum Plus, and I really want to, if being an elite driver allows Sketty to work with the way I want it to work, it's game on. Like I'm gonna be extremely happy. And if that was the only perk to being an elite driver, I would do it. So it's going to take me about 2 weeks to generate enough points to even be an elite driver before I can even check if it's worth it on Sketty. So I'm gonna put my time on the line and let you guys know if it's worth doing or not doing. So yeah, cash back on gas through Upside. I use this. I didn't put it in my spreadsheet because it gets deposited into like your daily Lyft rides, and it'll be too difficult to track that way. But I use my Lyft debit card, and I put that as my debit card for Get Upside. And when you do it that way, you use the specific gas stations that accept like Get Upside, I get the 7% cash back in addition of up to 30 cents off per gallon. Now, it doesn't take it off per gallon. You still pay the price at the pump, and then they'll refund you the difference. And it's nice, right? You're saving money on your biggest expense, and it doesn't take too much to do it. So definitely look into it. I don't have EV charging, but you get EV charging. 15% off auto maintenance and repairs with Goodyear Auto Service and Just Tires. That's dope. I use Gerald Tires. They're local to Charleston. They've been great. But you know, I'll price check next time I go out. TurboTax Premium, up to 50% off TurboTax. I use TurboTax. This is not a sponsor. I'm not telling you to use them either, but I like to use them. You can even use them, and even if you don't submit, there's no cost. So you can always double check if you have an accountant, and you should always be like in your numbers. So TurboTax gives you the ability to be in your numbers and to compare your numbers to what your accountant might be doing. You know, if you go to jail, you want to know why. All right, so how does Lyft Rewards work in my market? Let's see if we can get some more. I want some more information about the elite package. Maybe it's on the phone. I'm gonna see if it's on the phone. Give me a second. Platinum. Okay, yeah, it's right here. So premium airport pickups. So, well, this is not what I clicked, but enhanced street bonus privilege with elite. Resume broken ride streaks and receive prorated payment up to 3 partially completed ride streaks every 30 days. Kind of useless because they seem to be doing away with ride streaks. They've replaced it in my market with bonus hours, so that's not really. There's no bonus there in my head. Let's try clicking this again. Every time I click it, it goes somewhere else. So you get 6 location filters, which we already discussed. Cashback 10%. We already discussed that. I'm trying to click on the. It won't let me click on the airport. I'm just gonna look at it myself on my phone because this is ridiculous. Give me a second. All right, so for premium airport pickups, it says every time you join an airport queue, you'll get bumped ahead in the line by 30 minutes. You'll also have access to destination filters, and filters used for airport pickups will not count towards your daily limit. So, you know, that's fine. I'm not really a big airport person. Maybe I'll, once I get elite, I'll test it to see if it's a new strategy I should start incorporating. Never be afraid to retest strategies that haven't worked in the past once presented with new information. You should always be testing and retesting things as a rideshare driver or as a business owner. You should always, you know, don't completely write something off. If something didn't work for 1 3 month period out of the year, that doesn't mean it might not work in the summer. You know, there's some things there. All right, before you start going through the stories, I shared it earlier when I was streaming to myself. Some of the topics that we want to run through. Definitely won't get through all of them because time. But we're gonna talk about the Minneapolis Uber Lyft driver update. Pretty much every week there's an update on how they're trying to secure new minimum wage and new minimum earnings per mile. We're going to talk about the job cuts that are happening across the nation, because when jobs get cut, the first place people go while they're in between finding the next line of work is rideshare. So it's going to have an effect on us. We're going to talk about whether drivers are stealing Uber Eats orders because of low pay. We're going to see how that's escalating, and there's a bunch of other things we're going to cover. We're going to talk about EVs. I hopefully we can get to the EVs. There's a lot that I have to say about EVs that I haven't been saying, and I need to say it to you guys before you guys make a mistake. So I'm going to check the comments, and then we're going to start diving into these articles. Kobe says, I have a 2014 black Ford Escape with 130,000 miles, I'm assuming. I can't do overnight. I can do early morning until sunset because I have school. I can do weekends all day. I can do early morning until sunset. Can't do overnight. So, don't know what town you're in. You might have told me. If there's an airport close by, early mornings can be very profitable. I'm talking like 3 a.m. For me, when I do my early mornings, I try to leave like 3:30 a.m. and I'll get some good airport rides with some bonuses on it. So that's something you can do. If your Ford Black Escape, is that a 7-seater? That better be a 7-seater. Let's find out. Ford Escape. What do you say? 2014, I think. Let me not make stuff up. 2014. How many seats? I'm getting rid of it. So the 2014 Ford Escape is a 5-seat compact SUV that competes with the Honda CR-V. I would get rid of it. I would get rid of it, and I would get something that's more gas efficient. If the only justification for having a non-gas efficient car is if it pays better. And uh, does this qualify for Lux? I don't know. Does this qualify for like Uber Black? I doubt it. If it does, then all right, fine, cool. But if it only qualifies for regular, you're paying a lot more for maintenance. You're paying a lot more for gas, and I would get rid of this. I would get rid of it and get a Prius. To be honest, if you're upside down on the loan, which is common with cars, one, I would say focus on paying off your loan, and then two, I would say you are better off. Let's run a quick math example, right? Let's say let me say you owe $10,000 on the car, right? You're better off getting a loan for $20,000, right? Paying off the car, which will bring your net debt down back to $10,000, and then using that $10,000 to go and buy a Prius. Like if you're trying to do rideshare for long term, it looks like you're in school, so keep doing that. No matter how much money you make with rideshare, keep doing school. Rideshare is a great thing for it's a great stepping stone. So keep doing your school. Um, but you want to get a car that's more reliable, that's cheaper to maintain, better gas mileage, and if you own that car, that's what I would do. But I don't know. You could be a younger person. That could be your parents' car. I don't know what the split here is for it. But just remember, making more money is important, but also doing the work to save how much money you keep when you make it is important too. So that's something that's to think about, look around, and we're actually going to cover some topics about cars and buying, like once I finish going through these comments. IP says, I want to say thank you for doing all you do. It's very helpful. I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys are finding value in the things that I'm doing. Kobe says, is it worth using my car or renting? If you own a car, it is still, even with everything I just said, using your car is still better than renting. If you're renting, we're talking about $300 to $400 a week. That's You're not spending $300 to $400 a week even in your Ford Escape. So renting is very bad. It's not great for taxes. I have videos coming out about that. I don't want to dive too deep into it. I spoke about it last week where I went through some renting scenarios, and those videos will be out sometime this week. So if you want to make sure you don't miss them, you got to subscribe and turn the notification bell on. Sean says, thanks, man. I've been driving there on and off since about 2017. I'm able to drive in Ohio and Tennessee, actually. So that's good. What I need to do a better job doing is I need to, at the beginning every month, every week, I need to be pulling up a list of like calendar events, right? So I know if I have Uber Arena. That's a bad example. If I have like a sports arena close by, I will look at that arena's calendar because it's not just gonna be sports. You're gonna have concerts and things there too, and you can start adding it to your concerts so that you're not missing things. I thought about making one. It'll be too hard to do for every city, but I'm definitely gonna do one for my city, and I'll probably look through my analytics at the top 3 cities of my viewers, and I'll probably make a calendar that they can share. They could just put it like you can share a Google Calendar or an iCalendar, just have it all there, like the same way holidays pop up in calendars. So I'm gonna try to use that. Steven says I tried to use Getty, but it doesn't work. They just fixed it, and they only fixed it for Android. It hasn't worked for months. I promoted it previously. I took all the links out. I'm not telling you to try it now. Um, let me be the guinea pig. Let me test it. Let me make sure it works, and I will report back as I do. But don't put any more money in there. Um, I don't think they're gonna survive much longer. And I think because Lyft made a change to how reservations happen in the app, and I think that's what screwed them over. So they're still trying to figure it out. You can, if you have money in there, I would just request a refund if possible. But let me be the guinea pig, and then I'll report back to you guys as to whether or not it's worth it. I'm gonna make a video about it, like a real edited video going through it. Oh, Kobe says no car loan on the car. That's perfect. That is perfect. Um, you're still going to face maintenance issues eventually with that kind of car and gas, but if it's paid off, maybe you might want to run it into the ground. Whatever you do, if you decide to take my advice, don't go into more debt. I'm anti-debt. I'm on the Dave Ramsey plan. I just paid off my car. If you do want to downsize to something that's more gas efficient or whatever, just make sure you don't use debt to do it. If you have to save up the money, I assume your car might be worth more than a Prius. Like if you were to get a Prius the same year as your car, I assume your car is worth more than the Prius. So, and there might be things you have to fix, and there might be some like unknowns, right? Like the car you buy, you want to make sure you do a lot of research. You want to make sure you bring a mechanic. You want to ask them, hey, can we take it to the shop so they can tell me what's wrong? The biggest thing that might be wrong is that it might need a new battery. People tend to sell when they need a new battery. The new battery might be like $4,000, but it might be worth it too. So let's do a quick search. I have it on my personal Facebook to where um, Facebook just sends me random Prius prices. So I'll show you a couple, right? I'll show you what I would look for, and because my car is at 130,000 miles, so even if I can squeeze 100,000 miles out of it, I know that I need to start setting money aside for that inevitability. So, we'll call this a sinking fund where, once a month I'll put $500 into it and over time. And then, eventually something will happen. And I do have my emergency fund, but if you think something is happening and you can prepare for it, it's not an emergency. Emergencies are like instant. Like you get into an accident today, got to dip into your emergency fund. But we should all always, as rideshare drivers, be planning for something to happen to our car. So let me go over here to the shop on Facebook. Facebook Marketplace is a great place to find used cars. You just got to make sure you're doing your due diligence. Don't get scammed. Don't buy a car unless it has a clean title. You want to make sure it has a clean title. If it has a rebuilt title, you can't use it for Uber and Lyft. I'm struggling to find the marketplace. Give me a second. It's not even here. All right, hold on. I'm gonna quickly do this. I need more monitors. That's what I need for streaming. If I had more monitors, I wouldn't have to be clicking around trying to find so many different things. I know you guys see the monitors I have in the back. I need another monitor here. I need 4 monitors. Facebook Marketplace. Ah, I see why I was on my business page. Okay. All right. So I'll throw it back on the screen. So this looks good. This looks like too good of a deal, to be honest. A 2016 Prius for 12,900 with 163,000 miles. On average, a well taken care of Prius, you can get it to 300,000. The vehicle's paid off, and of course, this is based off of my location. So this is cars that are close to me. So it might be different for where you are. This car, but this car does look well taken care of. Clean title, no accidents. Right. So it's not bad. I try to talk down to 10K just because that's what you do. But 163,000 miles, I would trade a Ford Escape 130,000 miles for a Prius 163. Let's see what else they have. Prius, and I know they're not the nicest looking cars. The new Priuses are really nice, but don't buy it because it's brand new. We don't buy brand new cars and it's expensive. Don't get the Prius 3, right? So he says, see how it says Prius 3? That's the small one. It does not qualify for Uber and Lyft. In fact, if I were to buy Prius, it'd be the Prius 5 or the Prius V. It's the wider one. It has a much wider body. I could fit more into the trunk. This is one for 180,000 miles for 7,300, 2012. I try to get something a little newer. You want to find that sweet middle ground between something that's newer and doesn't have a lot of miles and doesn't cost a lot of money. And you have to be patient with it. So if you're looking for a Prius in an emergency situation, you're more likely to do something stupid, right? People get ready to do stupid when they're desperate. So, just plan. Let me see what they have for like 2017. Condition, availability, sort by. Mm-mm. All right, I'm not gonna do that. It's gonna require too much time. 2017, 13,000. See, this is good. This is good. It's more expensive than the one I said was good before, but the mileage is lower on this. No trades. If posted, it's a salvage title, so you want to be careful and make sure it's not a salvage title because you can't use it. So if you see a price that's too low, it might be a salvage title. That's just the way it goes. You got to be patient. You got to go through it. This is too old, but not a bad. If you're really struggling and you just want to do food delivery, remember food delivery doesn't really care about the requirements of your vehicle. This is something I would recommend to someone who wants to do food delivery. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, you could probably use a salvage title for food delivery. So the salvage title, they're not always bad, right? If you get into a fender bender and the insurance company determines that your fender is going to be too expensive to replace, it's better to just, write off the car. That car is now a salvaged car. So you do need to be more diligent about salvage titles, but you also don't completely dismiss it just because of it. But if you're doing rideshare, dismiss it because you can't use salvage titles for rideshare. So just some thought process, like just check it out. See, run the numbers, see what you're averaging in expenses in your current car, and if it's worth it with the paid off car, drive it into the ground. Go do it. You're doing school right now. You don't necessarily need to make huge changes to the structure. You just need to focus on making enough money to get through school. So if if you were like a full-time rideshare driver and not doing school, like that would be my recommendation. But just make sure you're being profitable. Check your numbers and be profitable. I've stayed here long enough. Let's see what else is in the comments. Kobe says, can you please share tips for new drivers doing Uber and Lyft? Where do I even start? I think the most important thing I could say in a short period of time is to learn your market. It's very that's the normal thing to say, the cliche thing to say, but I can provide you with a tool belt, but you still have to go to a person's house to fix their issue, right? So what I do on my channel is, it smells like something's burning in my house. What I It'll be fine. What I do is I'll it's gonna be difficult for me to do this live, but I do have videos that are focused on tips. But you can take my tips and apply them to different situations. You don't get caught up in doing one type of strategy. There are going to be strategies that might not make sense for certain time periods or for locations that might make sense other places. For example, I take $3 rides, but only when there's a time and place where there are ride challenges that will build on top of that, right? So it just depends on what you're doing. Don't get caught up in sitting at the airport all day. Don't get caught up in staying in the area filter all day. You need to figure out when is the best time to try different strategies. That's the number one advice I can give to someone who's new. Steven Say says, "Thank you. I'm a new driver at Charlotte, and so I'm so really beginner. Thanks for advice." You're welcome. I butchered reading that. All right, I'll be right back, guys. I smell something, and I want to make sure my house is not burning. I mean, it's still podcasting. Good news. My house is not burning. My wife likes to max out the burner when she's boiling water, and I guess the burner wasn't clean, but we're all good. I am gonna make like a in-depth from signing up to taking your first ride video in the future. It'll take some time. I'm behind on a lot of things in life, but I do want to make a beginner video, and I actually have the outline already made, so that will come in the future. Ron says it's called insurance for the backup plan that, and registering my wife's car with Lyft while mine is in the shop. So same thing here. I have my wife's car on my Lyft and Uber accounts just in case. But that's super backup. I would rather try to fix it, whatever. But there's so much I want to do, guys. I want to come out with like a financial structure plan for rideshare drivers. I'm low on time. Between actually having to drive and being a content creator, I'm just low on time. Like, I have to make sure my personal financial goals aren't hindered by what I'm trying to do with YouTube. So Dwayne Johnson's interest in cooking. That's funny, you're on. All right, so let's start diving into these articles. Okay. Minneapolis Uber Lyft drivers gather to push for higher pay. So this was written on January 30, and this is coming from NPR News. Minnesota Uber and Lyft drivers took a pause from their usual routes to make their voices heard in Minneapolis City Hall Tuesday. Their message: "We're not making enough." A new report published by the Minneapolis Office of the City Auditor Policy and Research Division compared pay under 3 different compensation models and rates for Lyft and Uber drivers. It projected rates for each model for trips to City Hall from each ward to compare them. Interesting way to do it. Model A suggests drivers would make $1.40 per mile, an increase from the 56 cents per mile they say they currently make. So that's almost $1 increase. That's really good if that comes true. The report said while it produced higher compensation rates than the other 2 models, Model A utilized the work of the Seattle report and accounted for localized factors and scope to determine rates per minute and mile. So previously, if you're just kind of tuning into this drama, this has been going on for a few months in Minneapolis. And the one government branch enacted a change for rideshare drivers in that city, and I believe it was the governor who said nah. He vetoed it, so it didn't come to fruition because Uber and Lyft were threatening to leave. But the governor said, "Hey, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do some research instead of making arbitrary changes." So I guess this is the result of what that research is, and I think that's it. I think that it's important to do the research before making huge changes. So from a middle ground perspective, I think that's okay. So we'll see how much this has developed since then. City staff figured Seattle's rideshare compensation at $1.55 per mile feel like, okay, I don't, that sentence doesn't feel complete. Accounting for benefits, Seattle provides, but Minneapolis does not. The city's rate was calculated at $1.40 per mile. There's something wrong with how they wrote with that sentence. Of the three, Model B appears to produce outcomes that should bring drivers within the minimum compensation range. More information on its formulation would be necessary to determine how it accounts for incurred expenses, such as vehicle maintenance, the report said. Okay. As Model C with a flat rate, while the simplest approach that meets the compensation range, poses challenges by not accounting for trip volume, traffic patterns, vehicle depreciation, or wear and tear. I wish instead of telling me what the issues are with these different models, they would just tell me what the models are. Minnesota Uber and Lyft Drivers Association President Eid Ali, he was on the Rideshare Guy podcast last week. So uh, if you go back in time, you want to check that out. It's pretty good. He says compensation should meet or exceed Minneapolis's large employer minimum wage of $15.57 per hour. I think that's a fair ask that Uber and Lyft should have outcomes that allow people to make more than the minimum of that state. Now, I showed you my numbers. I people in my town are making about $15 an hour on average with Lyft, and I'm making about double that. So you can see that strategy does play a role into it. But I don't think it's unreasonable for people to want minimum wage to match what the minimum they make in an app is. I know that's business owner like or independent contractor like, but I don't think it's unreasonable. All of these drivers, including myself, are struggling. We're not making enough to feed our families. And that is why we need to say it out loud and bring our voices to the places where they belong to. Minneapolis Councilmember Robin Wansley joined drivers and criticized Model B, which she said was supported by Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. The example that's in the report reveals that the mayor's proposal, Model B, means drivers are actually earning about 30% less per ride than they would earn in Model A, our original proposal, she said. So, of course, the drivers are going to want the higher proposal, which is also their original proposal. So I get the frustration. There was really no way that unless the mayor straight up agreed to the original proposal, that there'd be no frustration. But back and forth is healthy. Having numbers to back up why you pick certain models is healthy too. This is the drivers here. This is Edie, guy right here off to the side. Mayor Frey continues to support paying Minneapolis rideshare drivers a fair and equitable wage, said Press Secretary Ali Peters. And she said the model Frey supports Model B would roughly double the current pay for drivers, which that's a lot. Wait, hold on. She's saying 15. Are they suggesting that they make about $7 now per hour? Is that because if it's doubling and if it meets it at the $15 mark, is that what they're saying? Farron has been driving for Uber and Lyft since 2018 and said riders are overcharged and drivers are underpaid. I agree with that. We are asking for the mayor to listen to the residents of the city, to listen to the drivers, to work with the city council members so we can pass the best city ordinance regarding rideshare regulations. Last year, Frey vetoed an ordinance, I think that's the governor, vetoed an ordinance that would have required higher pay and better protections for rideshare drivers in the city. I guess it's the mayor. Lyft and Uber were against the ordinance. I just told you guys that. Lyft officials argued the policy would make fares too expensive in the city, while Uber sent a message to customers asking them to lobby the mayor and council members to oppose the policy. It feels slimy. The company said they'd stop serving the city if the ordinance, which was later vetoed, went into effect in January. I would have liked to have seen that. I would have liked to have seen what would happen if Uber and Lyft left the city. I want to see how that would have happened. City officials said they expect the council to take a final vote sometime in March. So that's like a month from now. So we'll continue following up with this. Expect them to become more vocal, more demonstrations in order to spread the word. But they weren't very clear on what the different models were. So let's use AI to figure out what it is. What are the proposed um, rideshare models for Minneapolis? As of February 5th, 2024, there are three main proposed rideshare models for Minneapolis being debated. Model A, which is the original proposal, minimum compensation of $1.40 per mile and 51 cents per minute for time transporting a customer. This is seen as the most favorable to drivers, potentially exceeding the city's large employer minimum wage, supported by the Minimum Uber and Lyft Drivers Association. Model B, which is Mayor Frey's proposal, minimum compensation rate of $1.17 per mile, okay, and 34 cents per minute for time transporting a customer. Lower than Model A, but still aimed at increasing driver pay. May not fully cover vehicle expenses according to some drivers. This is reasonable to me, honestly. If we're talking about minimum floors, uh, the average rideshare driver in America makes 80 cents per mile. That's something I've looked up in the past and I've showed on screen. I'm not going to find it right now, but on average, it's 80 cents per mile per GridWise, which tracks rideshare numbers and things like that. The standard, like the gold standard, is like if you're making over $1 per mile, a lot of drivers on Facebook or in the comments to be like, "Good job." Most people agree $1 per mile is like that's if you're doing better than that, you're doing okay. So if their minimum is set to $1.17, I think that's fine. I think that's pretty middle ground, pretty acceptable, pretty normal. But they want higher than that, which I'm not gonna fault people for wanting more. But as someone who is trying to see both sides, I think this is pretty reasonable. And if they're able to get this, I think they will be better than what they have now. And I think it'd be significant enough. Now, will it eventually need to be this? Maybe. But I think this is extremely reasonable. So let's see what Model C is. So Model C is a flat rate of $24 per hour applied only during pickup and transportation time. The simplest approach, but doesn't account for trip volume, traffic, or vehicle wear and tear. Might not incentivize enough driving in low demand times or areas. I'm not a particular fan of this flat, like, unless that's the flat minimum. Like, if you're saying this driver can make more than $24 an hour, but will protect you from falling underneath $24 an hour, that's cool. At this point, if they're paying you $25 only applied during pickup and transportation, you can't go higher than that, then you are an employee at that point. And Model C would be hurtful to me and hopefully to my viewers. I expect my viewers to be making more than $24 an hour, like before taxes and expenses. Of course, your market plays a role into it, but I expect you to be like a top earner in your city, like eventually. Right? If you're new, then you're new. You got some stuff to learn, but I expect you to be one of the top earners in your city. And if they cap how much money you can make, let's verify. Right? Is Model C capped at 24, or is that just the min? Let's see what they say here. This is AI. AI can display inaccurate information, but it's typically pretty good. So it says you're correct. There seems to be some ambiguity around the cap in Model C for Minneapolis rideshare proposals. Here's what I found. Some sources describe Model C as having a flat rate of 24 per hour without mentioning a cap. This implies that drivers would earn exactly $24 per hour regardless of the number of rides they complete or the total hours they drive. However, other sources suggest a 24-hour minimum income rather than a fixed rate. This means drivers could potentially earn more than $24 per hour based off of the number of rides and their duration. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a definitive answer about whether there's a cap on Model C. It's possible that different versions of the proposal were considered or that the final details haven't been fully decided, which is fair because the final details have not been fully decided. All right, so what would I pick? And what would you pick? Let me know in the comments. What do you want, Model B? I think everyone wants Model A. I don't think anyone would want Model C. So from my perspective, I would pick Model A, but I would do so knowing that it would increase, it would saturate the market even more. But I'm okay with increased competition because, like I said earlier, I expect to be the best. If not the best, close to it. So I think Tristan Thomas, even if the market became more saturated, would make more money with Model A overall. I would just continue working the hours that I know other drivers aren't working. And I know that like certain holidays, people just don't work, whether you're a driver or whoever. Even though there's like a lot of rides, I would just continue working on at those times. So Model A would be great. I'd still be happy with Model B. Model B is better than what I have now. I think I get paid like 80 cents per mile. Like, not like in my overall earnings, but like if you look at my rate card, Charleston Lyft rate card. Let's do 2023. So the rate card is kind of deprecated, but it still exists, but it's not what's primarily used. I don't think it says 98 cents, but this isn't. I know this isn't. I can. All right. Okay. I'm being lazy again, and I'll stop being lazy, and I can tell you my exact rate card based off of my account. So give me a second to pull that up. Gotta put in my codes. Hold on. Before almost said my codes out loud. Oh no, this is the wrong phone number. Ugh. I have two phones. I have a work phone and a business phone, a personal phone and a business phone. So give me a second. I don't know the business phone off the top of my head. It's becoming a pain in the butt. Hold on. Okay, I might have to do this another time. It's becoming too complicated. So I'll show my rate cards next week, so I can show you what I'm actually working with. But let's move on to the next story. So UPS is cutting 12,000 jobs. This is coming from CNN, and it came out January 30th, which is last week Tuesday. UPS announced Tuesday that it will cut 12,000 jobs as part of a bid to save $1 billion in costs. Managers and contractor positions will take up most of the layoffs. So if you're not familiar, there was a big change to how much like the drivers got paid, and they getting paid like over 100K after 5 years with some great benefits. The union really came through for them. But I just want to point out that things can look great on paper, but once it comes down to actually doing things, like it doesn't always come out the way you think it will, right? So like the government can step in and increase the minimum wage of those in Minneapolis for the drivers, and they might think it's a win, but it might increase. It's to win in one place. When it comes to like the economy, you have to lose somewhere else, and that's usually what happens. I'm not saying that you shouldn't make changes because of that, but oftentimes when people want change, they think that there's never anything negative that can come about it. And so, like, here are the negative repercussions of the deal that they made with the union. So, ouch. The cut comes as UPS issued a disappointing sales outlook for this year, saying it expects global revenue of between 92 billion to 94 billion. That would be up from the 91 billion in revenue it reported for 2023. But analysts surveyed by Refinitiv had been expecting revenue to be at least 95 billion. UPS lost business last year as customers concerned about a possible strike by the Teamsters shifted shipments to rival carriers such as FedEx. So this is the name of the what is it called? Drawing blanks. On page labor union. I don't know. I'm struggling with that. Teamsters is the name of the labor union that negotiates between the employees of UPS and UPS. So while they were striking, they lost a lot of business. And because of that loss of business, now they're having to fire people. Although UPS said it expects to get most of that business back, had it had won back only about 60% of the lost business. So that is a that's great for the workers technically in a long period of time, because now UPS will have to acknowledge that, hey, if people strike, we're going to lose business and it's going to take time to recover. In the same breath, those who are striking have to acknowledge that, hey, if we go on strike, it might take a while to recover and people are going to get fired as a result. So it's not exactly parallel to rideshare, but it's important to think about these things when we're pushing for legislation for rideshare. UPS business surge. Okay, get hit with an ad. UPS's business surged to record levels in the first 3 years of the pandemic as online shopping exploded. The company's sales topped 100 billion for the first time in 2022. The fact that revenue in 2023 fell more than 9% and won't top that benchmark again in the near future is candidly difficult and disappointing, said CEO Carol Tom on a conference call with investors Tuesday. That should be expected. There was a lot of money. I think it was like 30% of all American dollars that have ever existed or was printed during the pandemic. So there's a lot of money given out, and I'm not knocking it, but I am saying that businesses who aren't planning ahead with the understanding that the pandemic is over and we're going to have to normalize, I think that they're very short-sighted. So I like you should have seen this coming. Who didn't see this coming? Hire me. I saw it coming. Some of this performance was due to the macro environment and some due to disruptions associated with our labor contract negotiations, as well as higher costs associated with the new contract. We don't have to get too deep into the actual the the, the meat of this. The point I'm making here right now is that this isn't abnormal. This is the only company doing more layoffs. Like we saw rounds of layoffs last year, and we're seeing a lot more layoffs now. And typically, the first place people like to go when they're laid off is gig work, right? Some of us became gig workers because we lost our jobs or we hated our jobs, so we quit and we started doing gig work until we found something better. And then some of us got stuck here. And I've been here for like 3 years and I'm working towards building something else. And I think rideshare is a great stepping stone, but other people are going to start looking for this stepping stone. It's only going to get more saturated. So as we're seeing more layoffs, right? These are companies that are pretty much based in California, these tech companies. And it's not just tech, it's not really tech people getting let off. It's people who make less than tech people who aren't going to be able to find a job as quickly. We're going to resort to rideshare and gig work. So that's something that you really need to be aware of. Like in my city, the factory closed down and I felt it. I felt it in the demand. Now, what I've also found is that over time, as low performers struggle to make money, they eventually get a regular job. So eventually it balances out, but there are waves, ebbs and flows to it. And I think that overall, year by year by year, the income that we are able to make will decrease. COVID was an anomaly. So I expect that summer 2024 is going to be the best summer I have in the future of rideshare. I expect 2025 summer to be worse. I expect 2026 summer. I expect it to gradually get worse unless something major changes in the economy. Like another COVID or something like that. So that's something that you should keep in mind. I'm gonna do a quick check in on the comments. Ron says backup car is a 2017 Platinum Maxima and still not a comfort vehicle. I am not a fan of Maximas, especially from that year range. I know they all have like transmission problems, but whatever works for you, whatever works for you. I don't know how they decide on the whole comfort thing or not. It's actually pretty disappointing that there's no like guidance. They just tell you what cars are, and then you just have to suck it up for the rest. Ron says Lyft is more whack than 2 weeks ago. Got paid for $8 for ride from Cannon Street to airport. I will say I agree that the airport rides are decreasing. I will say last week Friday and Saturday was really good because we had a concert in our area. So when I make my calendar, make sure you get it so you can always keep track of what's happening in the area. But I have noticed the airport rides have decreased again. So like maybe a year ago it was like $12 without any bonuses, and then it became like 10. Now it's getting pretty low, and I agree with you. I'm seeing just exactly that. Killer of the Pax says, yes, these organizations use IRS deductions as the actual cost of ownership for vehicles and don't include tax deductions. That's how they claim such low pay. That is true. So you're going to see a lot of articles, especially from Business Insider. I got some lined up for today. Don't know if we'll get to them, but they'll be like, oh, yeah, driver made $130,000, but only took home $14,000 according to tax documents. Well, yeah, that's part of like the benefit, but a lot of people don't understand that, and they use it to vilify Uber and Lyft, as they should. But if you want to have accurate change, you have to call out accurate problems, right? We make money off of those tax savings. That's what makes being a rideshare great. But you only profit off the difference if you keep your expenses low. So, Color the Pack says, yes, Model C is $24 for active time plus tips. So it's going to work out to be less than $24 overall. I hate this whole active time. I already ranted about it, but I think that Uber or Lyft specifically changed the wording of active versus online because of these legislations that are being passed. Right, New York is doing things based off of active time. So is Seattle, and I think Lyft has accepted it's going to be a trend. But active time, I'm not going to say it's not important. Active time is not more important than online time. I think online time is more important. I think we should have access to seeing to easily seeing both active time and online time. But I can understand why, if these laws are saying, all right, you're gonna get $24 an hour for your active time, I understand why they're front facing that information. But it still feels disgusting to me. It still feels slimy. It feels like, not a lot of people want to put the effort in, right? Not a lot of people are going to sit there and listen to me try to teach them to be more business oriented. And then on top of that, to actually go and try to be more business oriented. That's not what the common thing is. People who, they fall into rideshare, they're not always people who have business mindsets, and that's okay. Not everyone wants to be a business leader or whatever, but the more they bury certain numbers, is the less likely that person will ever reach out to it. I'm pretty sure in a year from now, if active time is like the only thing we use to measure, and I ask a driver how much they're making per hour, and they say $25 an hour, I'm gonna have to follow up with the second question and say, is that your active time or your online time? And I feel like one day someone's gonna be like, what's the difference? And I'm gonna be like, there's a huge difference. But I can honestly rant. It seems like such a small change, but off of this small change, there's gonna be a big change in perception. Watch. Glitter the Pack says, I'd want the current upfront fare model. Rate mandates virtually eliminate all surge and incentives in Seattle. Okay, so are you from Seattle? I'm curious to hear about your experience in Seattle, or if you're just regurgitating things, which is fine. But that's kind of what I would expect. Um, I expect people to make more per hour, but to not make as much money, if that makes sense. Like, you might have 10 strong hours, and then because the market's so saturated, your next 15 hours aren't that great. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. Like, you'll make more money for the hours that you're busy, but they're going to be less hours in which you can be busy. That's the best way to put it. Ron says Model A for sure, but a realist, it ain't happening in small market this year. So me, I don't think we're a small market. I think we're a mid cap market. I think we're a small market for 6 months, and then a big market for 6 months, and we even out in the middle. Devani Ali says, no offense, but some I'm not reading that, but some people, I mean, it's not just people of a specific race that might smell. It could be any and everyone. It happens. I kind of suck it up, and just, most of my rides are short rides, so I usually just suck it up and just try not to breathe too much. Sharuk, let me know if I pronounced that correctly, says Lyft is very slow, long wait times, but give better ride challenges. Definitely give better ride challenges. I would like to know more about what times you usually work, and I hope you don't say between 9 and 5. But yeah, let me know what times you really work. You usually work. Let me know what city you're in, and we'll do some diving. But we'll move on to the next story, and I'll jump back in here once we go through a couple. We have about 50 minutes left. we're doing okay as far as timing goes. We're doing a little okay. All right, so I think I'm gonna skip this one. This is not. There we go. You can skip this one. All right, so this one is Uber drivers see dip in monthly earnings. So it follows what we're talking about now. So let's see what they're saying. Is this a paid story? It's not a paid story. Okay. Uber drivers. Another ad. Uber driver sees a dip in their monthly earnings according to a new report. This was written February 2nd, 2024. Uber drivers reported a. I'm not going to read that. Okay, here we go. Uber drivers have seen a marked decrease in their monthly average gross earnings in the past year, according to a new research report from Gridwise, an app that helps gig workers track their earnings. So this is important because Gridwise actually connects to people's Uber and Lyft accounts, and then they can create studies and data based off of that information. Uber drivers reported a 17.1% decline in gross earnings in 2023 compared to the prior year, the report said. Gridwise, a report pulls from its database of anonymized gig mobility data from more than 500,000 gig drivers and findings from a survey conducted with 528 active gig drivers and 1,000 gig service consumers. Lyft drivers, according to the report, saw an increase of 2.5% of monthly average gross earnings in the past year. Both companies saw a percentage decrease in work hours in 2023 compared with 2022. That's an interesting perspective. I want to break this down a little bit. It's a little not obvious what they're saying, so I'm going to give it to AI. Simplify this. If you're not using AI, it's very helpful. This one is free. It's called bar.google.com. It's pretty good. So here's a simplified version of the statement. Good news for Lyft drivers. Their average monthly earnings went up by 2.5% in the past year, but they also worked fewer hours compared to the year before. All right, so that's an interesting observation. We'll keep reading. Beyond financial considerations, tips also play a vital role in contributing to job satisfaction for gig workers. According to the report, almost 80% of gig drivers reported that tip matters significantly to their overall income. It shouldn't, but I understand why it does. Still, just over 1/4 of rideshare driver trips lead to a tip, the report said. That's kind of what I experienced, about 25%. And it's hit or miss. Some days I might get no tips, and then other days I might get 50% tips, but it usually averages out to about 25% tip rate. And not on the dollar value, on the amount of trips that I take. According to the Gridwise data, rideshare drivers derive only 10% of their income from tips. In comparison, more than half of food and grocery delivery drivers' income comes from customer tipping. I think that's fine. The base pay for those delivery apps are not great, so I think that's acceptable. Part of the issue could be transparency of where a customer's dollars go. 3/4 of gig service consumers surveyed said gig companies should provide more detailed information on how tips contribute to a driver's earnings, the report said. Nearly 63% believe that a clearer understanding of this would positively influence their tipping behavior. I agree, more information is always better. I will forever stand by that. All of this comes as Uber and Lyft specifically have continued their path to recovery from COVID-19 lows. Uber experienced a 66% jump in trips from January 2022 to the end of 2023. Lyft saw a 52% rise in completed trips in that same period. According to the report, both Uber and Lyft are set to report their fourth quarter and full year financial reports. So this is important to look at. They just said that Lyft drivers' incomes have increased like 2%, which is not much. If we're talking about billions of dollars, 2% of $1 billion is a lot of money. But we're talking about the average rideshare driver who makes $35,000. 2% of that is not a lot. So even though Lyft and Uber are saying that they have an increase in the amount of people taking rides, then why is like the income being made not reflected in this? So they're saying there's a lot more rides. They're also saying that they're growing the amount of drivers on the platform. But if it's like they're making these comparisons to try to obfuscate, like trying to like make it less known of like what's happening. So yeah, the amount of rides we're getting on the platform is increasing, but pay is only moved 2%. Like how is that explained? So So that's it's this article wasn't that great. 17% dip in income for Uber drivers, even though rides are up. Something's got to break somewhere. There's something is missing, right? There's data that's not being shared with us that is causing investors of Uber and Lyft to think everything is okay, but for drivers not to feel the same. There's something missing, and I don't. It's like I feel like it's scratching me, like in the back of my throat, and it's like I want to know what it is, and it's probably going to take a lot more research and deep diving into it. Like, what is that critical information that we're missing that's not bridging the gap from how Uber sees driver pay to how drivers see driver pay? There has to be something there. I keep going to the wrong thing. All right, so we're going to talk about the government's replacement for Uber and Lyft. There's a lot of these popping up, and I try to cover them because it's important for us to accept and understand that there's competition from other drivers on Uber and Lyft isn't the only competition we face as Uber and Lyft drivers. So this is from the Seattle Times, written January 27th. I was joking about a free Uber service, but Bellevue's gone and done it. They say behind every joke lies some truth. For me, recently it turned out to be lying right across the lake in Bellevue. In a recent column about riding the empty ghost trams of Seattle streetcar, I noticed that one in South Lake Union is costing taxpayers more than $20 per ride. I cracked. It would have been cheaper for the city to pay for me to hire an Uber. One reader responded, I'm fairly sure you were joking about the city hiring you as an Uber, but guess what? That's exactly what they're doing here in Bellevue. You should venture over to the smart side of the lake to check it out. It turns out it's true. It's not Uber specifically, but 6 months ago, Bellevue debuted its own downtown circulatory transit service, sort of its own version of a streetcar. Only theirs is without the tracks, the trains, or really any startup infrastructure expense at all. A company called Circuit has been contracted to run a fleet of 8 all-electric shuttles around the downtown portion of Bellevue. You can summon any of the shuttles with an app and then ride anywhere within a 6 square mile zone for free. It may not sound big to you, but if you work in a major city, and Charleston, for example, in my city, this would hurt a lot because I make very good money off of short rides that have bonuses attached to them. If they were, and that's like downtown where all the students are, if students had access to something like this, I bet there would be a significant drop in the amount of Uber and Lyfts coming out of downtown, which would hurt everyone. That's where majority of the money really is. This service is paid for by Bellevue's hotel tax. Interesting. I took the reader's advice and tried it out. From the Bellevue Hilton parking lot of south of downtown, I put up the Circuit app and told it I wanted to go to Bellevue's downtown park, 1.1 miles away. In 6 minutes, a spacious shuttle pulled up that looked like a Hot Wheels toy on steroids with the wide windows of a sightseeing van. That's not it, but I'll scroll back up to show you guys in a second. A few minutes later, I was deposited in the park, no charge. I tried it again, taking a hop from the park on the southwest side of Bellevue's downtown all the way across to the fancy new Spring District 2.3 miles away. Same result. A silent shuttle showed up in 4 minutes. On the way, we also stopped to pick up some Amazonians who were leaving work from the company's new Sonic skyscraper. So here's another look at outlooks. Let's see if I can make it bigger. That's as big as it's gonna get. So not bad. Of course, potentially be riding with other people. I guess depending on the day and what's happening. But this is a threat, right? It might not be like this. It might not be an overwhelming threat, but I think rideshare is going to die by 1,000 cuts. You know, there's gonna be 1,000 different things that happen across society that continues to decrease driver earnings, right? Like one of them is going to be self-driving cars. A lot of people like they laugh or scoff when I bring up self-driving cars, but just one self-driving car on the road takes passengers away from other people. Even if you don't agree that self-driving cars are coming, we're literally working for companies, Uber and Lyft, that have already said that it's their plan to replace us with self-driving cars. So even if they fail, we're still working for companies that have said we want to replace you guys. So like that, it's a signal to where they how they value us is what I'm really trying to get at. So it's very important to always have an exit plan with rideshare. Don't get trapped here. Where this channel is about how to use rideshare as a stepping stone into something else. And I have there's like I'm not gonna go through them for the sake of time, but there's that one by Bellevue, right? I actually have a whole category of like alternative rideshare, right? So all of these stores right here. See, new $2 government backed rideshare program. Like there's a bunch of them, and they're popping up in different cities by different governments. So like, don't underestimate this. I'm not gonna read through this one, but let me see. I'm trying to see what town this one is in. This was in Pennsylvania. So demand grows in central Pennsylvania for $2 Uber like door to door on demand transit rides. So why is that a problem? Well, we'll watch the video when that ad is done. All right, so I'm gonna look at the comments until it starts. Kobe says, which is better, Uber and Lyft? I'm gonna say both. Don't fall into the trap of what's better. There's certain time periods of the day where Uber is better, certain time periods of the day where Lyft is better. You should be using both. Shock says, how are you doing, Tristan? I finally catch you live. I'm driving though. I appreciate you messaging me. I appreciate you being out there making some money, and I'm glad you were able to finally catch me live.
Seth Kaplan found where this is working locally and where it's maybe working too well. Seth, explain.
Yeah, Alicia, we're talking about something that already exists in parts of York and Franklin counties, and that might soon exist in Lancaster County.
Pennsylvania.
On-demand service.
Offered by Rapid Transit, free for seniors, $2 for the rest of us if we live within certain zones. You use an app to request a ride.
Started in York County, in East York, and in Red Lion. And then we have moved to other locations, Lewisburg and Milton, Sunbury and Selinsgrove, Danville and Bloomsburg, and Franklin County, Chambersburg.
I asked Rich Farr, head of Rapid Transit, where it's working best.
Sunbury is a great area for this, we think, because it's dense enough that it needs some form of public transportation, but it's not so dense or so large that we can't serve it with microtransit.
On the other hand,
Chambersburg is one area that we are.
Okay, so this seems to be catered more for older people, which still would bite into the whole Lyft Uber thing. Probably not as much as the one as we just watched, but like I said, it's probably going to be death by a lot of little different cuts. So we just saw that one. Let's see what this one is saying. So this looks to be pretty similar, but this is more for accessibility. It looks like it says local transit agencies mimic Uber and Lyft and gain ridership. So probably not the type of person you'd want to pick up. That'd be pain in the butt to get in your car. So this maybe isn't a direct comparison to what we should be looking out for. All right, so yeah, so we're not gonna stay too long on that. Let's see, what should we go next? Okay, so let's yeah. Let's talk about electric cars. I've been putting this off. We'll do electric cars and then I'll call it a day once we're done with this set, but this set might be a little long. So this article is from the Telegraph. Hold on. It's a pay to read article. Trying to get around it. Here we go. This is by the Telegraph. It was written January 18th, my birthday. It says electric cars suffer unsustainable depreciation in second-hand market. Very important if you have an EV or if you're considering buying one. Used EV prices dropped 23% in 1 year, according to Auto Trader. Electric cars lose as much as half of their value after just, let me see if I can exit this out. Yes, awesome. Electric cars lose as much as half of their value after just 3 years on the road, new figures show, as the rate of depreciation far outstrips petrol equivalents. Research from Auto Trader said there were unsustainable levels of depreciation in the electric car market, with used prices of battery-powered vehicles dropping by 23% in the last year alone. So this is important, right? Electric cars lose as much as half of their value after just 3 years on the road, and the rate of the depreciation far outstrips what you're saving by not paying for gas. So, when I'm in a lot of Facebook groups with different drivers, different markets, and they'll have a Tesla and they'll always brag about how much money they're saving by not having to buy gas or not having to change their brakes often or not getting oil changes. But they never really talk about, the $1,000 car payment that they have, or, the fact that their car costs like $50,000, $60,000. The amount of money that these electric vehicles cost does not make up for the fact or the numbers of how much you save by owning one. So that's very important to understand if you're considering buying a Tesla. Very, very important. The online vehicle marketplace said a motorist buying a 50,000 pound electric car could expect to lose 24,000 pounds in value over 3 years, while a similarly priced gas car could lose 17,000 pounds. This is written in Britain, I guess, the UK. So I'm actively trying to convert gas and petrol and numbers. The value of used electric cars has dropped dramatically in the last 12 months after COVID-related supply shortages eased and as rising electricity prices hit demand. So while getting a brand new electric car, I would say a hard no, hard pass, don't do it. The market has become extremely great for used electric cars. Now, I'm still not saying, I still haven't decided if I would buy a Tesla for $15,000. That's on the low end. Let's call it 20. Would I buy a used Tesla for $20,000, or would I buy a used Prius for $20,000? I still don't know what the real answer is there yet. But the answer I have currently is I wouldn't buy a $20,000 used Prius. I'd want to spend nothing more than $12,000 on a used car for Uber and Lyft. That's where I'm at with that. So unless these Tesla used car prices are dipping down to the $12,000 range, it's probably something I just won't consider. But mathematically, I have to justify that, and I haven't justified that mathematically yet. So what I would have to do to mathematically justify it is I would have to look at the used Tesla for averaging about 20 grand and compare that to a used Prius and see if it makes sense financially. So maybe that's a good video idea to do. Auto Trader's latest report warned that residual values of electric cars remain unsustainably low. It said that the price of used electric cars could come under further pressure this year as thousands of motorists return vehicles acquired on 3-year leases and as manufacturers cut the price of new vehicles. They're missing out on the huge fact that Hertz is dumping their electric car vehicle, which we'll talk about in a different article. With over 800,000 new electric cars registered between 2020 and 2023, supply returning to the used car market will only increase in 2024. And if demand does not keep up, electric cars could depreciate even further, undermining both consumer and retailer confidence. So what they're saying here is, if people aren't buying brand new electric cars because they can just buy used electric cars that are cheaper, then it's going to force Tesla, for an example, to continue to decrease the average price of their new car, which they have aggressively been doing already. So it's good for the overall market, bad for these manufacturers. Very bad for these manufacturers, and bad for the owners of new cars. I think COVID is playing a role here, where COVID saw used car prices skyrocket because it was just so hard to get cars. I think we're starting to see a flip, where car values are dropping like a rock. If you buy a new car and you drive it off the lot, it might be worth like $10,000 less instantly just because of how the market is moving. So something to be aware of. Manufacturers are now applying a record discounts to new electric vehicles in a bid to boost stuttering demand. I just said that's what's happening. Auto traders said car makers were slashing thousands of pounds off prices, with average discounts of 10.6% offered in December. This compares to discounts of 4.8% a year earlier. Okay. All right. So we have a couple of articles that are like, on the same topic. So we're going to jump into the next one. So this is by Axios, January 19th. It says, Inside America's Electric Vehicle Whiplash. Some of the largest traditional automakers are experiencing electric vehicle growing pains and pulling back on production. Why it matters? Consumer demand is falling behind lofty projections drummed up by manufacturers and other car industry stalwarts. What's happening? Ford announced today that it's cutting output of the battery-powered F-150 Lightning to make more Bronco SUVs and Ranger pickup trucks. Not typically the demographic for what a rideshare vehicle would be, but it's still an important signal to understand how these manufacturers are treating electric cars, because we're the ones that are buying these electric cars. The CEO of Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, Dodge, and Jeep, told reporters today that the auto industry is risked an EV bloodbath if a pricing war started by Tesla continues. Rental car giant Hertz said last week that it plans to sell 20,000 of its electric vehicles and buy more gas-powered rentals. If big corporations are spending money on new cars and 3 years later they're getting rid of them, and instead of getting more of them, they're getting gas-powered vehicles, that is a signal that rideshare drivers who make infinitely less money than these billion-dollar corporations should not be getting brand new Teslas, brand new electric cars. It's not looking good. It's not. You should not buy a brand new car, period. Electric or whatever. Hold on. You don't buy a brand new car, period. Unless you have a net worth of over $1 million, no matter what kind of job you have, no matter what you do, whether you're a rideshare driver, you're a coder, if you have debt, do not buy a brand new car. You cannot afford to waste money on the instant depreciation that will happen once that car is removed from the lot. Now, as a rideshare driver, we should be buying the cheapest thing possible to make the most amount of money, right? For me, I've never driven an XL, so I don't know how XL is in my market. If the cheapest thing for you is to get an XL, which you might not be able to get a good used car for 10 grand. You might have to put 15 grand into an XL to get a decent XL. If that's what you've had and that's what has worked, then that's fine, right? That's the cheapest thing that helps you make the most amount of money. So you're not just getting the cheapest thing; you're getting the cheapest thing that can make you the most amount of money. For me, in my market, I believe that would be a Prius, which I think is the best car for rideshare. But I would not get a new Prius, despite how sexy the 2024 Prius looks. I like it's look how great this car looks. I think it's awesome. It's very sleek. I never thought I would say sexy and Prius in the same sentence unless I was saying a Prius is not sexy. But even with this being so, I would not get a brand new car. I'm currently in a phase where I'm trying to don't buy a car that's going to force you to work more hours, right? The goal is to lower your expenses and work less hours with Uber and Lyft so that you can put more hours into stepping out of Uber and Lyft in whatever field you want to step into. But if you know what, I think I have an article here that will carry on what I'm saying. Here it is. So we'll just jump to this article. Americans can no longer afford their cars. Like it's a huge epidemic that we don't talk about enough, especially in the rideshare space. Yes, Uber and Lyft aren't paying us what I think to be is fair, but there are things that we can do to save money. And this is probably the biggest saddlebag preventing us from stepping out of Uber and Lyft, being upside down on a car. For decades, car ownership, let me close my Facebook because that's where that ping just came from. Okay. For decades, car ownership has been a trademark of the American lifestyle, with vehicles becoming symbols of freedom, independence, and even rebellion, as well as necessity. But in 2024, the country's legendary love story with the automobiles appears to have reached a crucial point of potential no return, as cars have become unaffordable to butchered that. Sorry. Have become unaffordable to I don't know why I can't say that word. Has become unaffordable to millions. There you go. Life has generally gotten more expensive in the aftermath of the pandemic, including the cost of cars, car insurance, and car repairs. You guys missed it when I was streaming to myself because I didn't know the stream didn't start. My car insurance has doubled by almost 50%. It's some number between 40% and 50%. And it's going up for a lot of people. I'm going to put that video out. You'll have to rewatch it. But if your insurance is up for renewal this year, start bracing for it. I was paying $300 for 2 cars, right? So pretty much $100 for my wife's car, $100 for my car, and then another $100 for the rideshare endorsement that I have on my car. So $300. Not that bad. It's now going to be $500. We have not gotten to any accidents, and we have not gotten any tickets in the duration of last year to this year. In fact, there were like rumors that certain insurance companies were pulling out of my state, South Carolina. So some it's in the video. I don't want to rehash it too much. Look out for that video. It's going to be why insurance is doubling in some markets or some catchy headline. It'll be out. You need to watch it because you need to start planning for it, and you need to start looking for quotes. So yes, insurance is getting up there, and I'm actually really, 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 really sad that my insurance payment is increasing. Both new and used car prices rose to record highs during the pandemic as the car industry was experiencing supply chain disruptions and chip shortages. Since 2020, new car prices have risen by 30%, according to data shared by AI car shopping app Copilot with Newsweek. Within the same timeframe, used car prices have jumped by 38%. I want to stop here, and I want to talk about how this isn't political, but this is something we need to observe and accept. The government gave out a lot of money during the pandemic. There were a lot of shortages in the pandemic, and this is the result of those two things. Like, government can influence things and create changes that seem positive on paper, but there are negative effects that can outlast the short termness of that. So like you have to apply that to rideshare as well. The more government gets involved with rideshare, is the larger potential for something like this to happen. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't get involved because Uber and Lyft can screw people if there's no government interference, but we need to be careful about biting off too much because it has to come out somewhere else, right? When you eat food, it has to come out somewhere. You have to pay for it somewhere else. In 2023, a year during which inflation slowed down to the point that the Federal Reserve decided to stop hiking rates, new car prices rose by 1% to an average of $50,364, while used car prices fell by only 2% to an average of $31,000. Another point I want to drop on top of that, the slowing of people buying new cars is the result of the Federal Reserve increasing interest rates, making it less appealing for people to go and buy new cars because of the interest rates. And the reason why they did that is because of COVID. They're trying to slow the market down to normalize prices. Prices were very high because interest rates were very low. So I'm not gonna say it's wrong that they're doing this. This is a normal part of capitalism. There are ups and there are downs. Sometimes those ups are too high, COVID, and sometimes those downs are too low, depressions, recessions. The goal is to keep it as balanced as possible, but it's not something that we as individuals have complete control over. And that's why it's important to have your finances like in check. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to pay off all my debt. I just paid off my car. Once I'm debt free, I'm gonna have a 6-month emergency fund, and that will give me the flexibility to insulate myself from inflation, from government decisions, and things like that. So it doesn't matter where on the aisle you stand, left, right, red, blue. Create a life where no matter who's in office, it doesn't have a major impact on your financial life. That's what I want. I want to be able to make decisions without thinking about the finances behind those decisions. And I want that for you guys too. I'm going to be building a product for people who are like-minded in that sense. It's gonna take me some time, maybe a month or two, but it's actually gonna be a community where we can like really come together. And I have the name for it already, but I'm gonna save the name. But we'll finish this article. I'm getting distracted. But as things stand, cars are still really expensive for many Americans. Just 10% of new car listings are currently priced below $30,000, according to Copilot. Things are not much better in the used car market, where only 28% of listings are currently priced below $20,000. That's actually rough. Only 28% are less than $20,000. It's not good. According to an October report by MarketWatch, Americans needed an annual income of at least $100,000 to afford a car, at least if they're following standard budgeting advice, which says you shouldn't spend more than 10% of your monthly income on car related expenses. I think that's a good rule to have even as a rideshare driver, like generally speaking. If I still have my car note, I think I'd be over that 10%. And I think now that my car is paid off, I believe I'm under that 10% as far as gas and insurance and all that goes. That means that more than 60% of American households currently cannot afford to buy a new car based off of census data. For individuals, the numbers are even worse, with 82% of people below the $100,000 line. So, why have cars become so expensive? There's no doubt about it, 2023 was one of the most challenging years to buy a car, especially for more budget conscious consumers, Copilot CEO Pat Ryan told Newsweek. The prices saw a substantial run up in the spring, driven by confident consumers at the upper end of the market, and they never fully recovered. People who took out a lot of debt to buy cars they couldn't afford. Across most brands and segments, car prices have barely moved from the levels at which they started the year. When you also factor in multiple interest rate hikes, there were not many deals to be had for car shoppers. And a big part of this problem that's not obvious, but I'm friends with a lot of like dealership guys, is these dealerships take out loans to buy used cars to sell to other people that have to take out loans to buy those used cars. So what happens when people don't want to take out loans to buy those cars, but the dealership already took out loans for those cars? Those dealerships are paying that interest while those cars are on their lot. And because they don't want to take a loss on the value, even though the market is saying and dictating you need to decrease your prices, they're not. That's why we're not seeing this big crash. We're seeing some crashes. Vroom, Carvana competitor shut down. They couldn't sustain their business model, and we're seeing some dealerships having, I think, like 3 or 4 dealerships closed just this year alone. So it's a little hush hush, but either these companies are gonna have to sell vehicles at a loss, or they're gonna go out of business, or weather the storm. Who knows how long the storm will happen? But there, if nothing major changes, there's gonna be a big crash in the car market, and it's gonna favor people who are able to buy in cash because interest rates are really bad. They're predatory right now, right? But if you're paying cash for a car, the interest rate is irrelevant, and you might be able to find a really good deal just because other people who are in debt or upside down on their car are, like I said earlier, desperate people do silly things. So you might be in a position to take advantage of people doing silly things if you get your finances together. So that's just like me. I expect my car to die in about 100,000 miles. I am trying to put myself in a position to where I can get a really good deal on a Prius when it's my time to get the Prius. Simply put, cars have become more expensive. In November 2019, the average transaction price for a new vehicle was $38,000. In November 2023, that figure jumped to $47,000. Yikes. And I think that's because electric cars came out. The pandemic's disruption of manufacturing supply chains, as well as outsized consumer demand in 2021, really put a strain on vehicle inventory and drove prices up. Dealers practically had customers lined up to buy vehicles that weren't available. That's true, I remember that. Supply chain disruptions also forced manufacturers to prioritize more profit, higher trim vehicles in their lineups. They're focusing a little too much on the past. And I want that to focus some more on right now. So hold on, let me scroll through a little here. They're saying that buyers are shifting towards larger trucks, and that's why they're making less smaller cars. That makes sense. Yes, that's pretty much it. So it's the car buying is not an issue that is only problematic in the rideshare community. It's everyone, right? Whether you do rideshare or whether you don't do rideshare, it's everyone, and it's one of the biggest things holding us back from like having financial peace. Like, how can you, in the same breath, say Uber and Lyft they're taking too much? I'm not making as much as I was during the pandemic, and then turn around and buy a car. What is the average car payment in America, 2024? The average car payment for a new vehicle is $700. $700 a month. For used, it's $500. How can you turn around and justify that in a market where we're all saying Uber and Lyft, they're paying less money than they were before? It's hard. You can't. And some drivers are rolling over negative equity from their previous. Let's say they owe $10,000 on their car. They walk into CarMax and they buy a $40,000 car. They'll roll that $10,000 that they owed on the previous car into the new car, making it what $50,000. It's a common practice, and it's got to stop. We got to break that habit. We got to get this debt out of our lives. I know there's people out there who think like that's good debt. The only one I'd argue is good, quote unquote, is a home, but it's still a risk. All debt is risk. Some debt is more or less risky, but I remember like my check engine light came on January 2nd after I did my New Year's runs, and my first thought was, man, I'm glad that even if my engine blew up right now, my car's paid off. I'm not gonna have a blown engine sitting in someone's shop and having to pay that car note. Like, the amount of like stress that was removed from me, taken off my shoulders, that I never had to think about. You know, I've been in debt my entire adult life, and I'm looking forward to where it's all paid off, and I get to experience the feeling of being debt free. Like, I hear people talking about it all the time, and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm trying to lower the risk in my life. I'm trying to focus more on the things I want to focus on, and I think that removing debt is a very important key for everyone who wants to do that. Like, if you want to spend more time with your kids, have less bills, right? Don't go and buy $1,000 car payment that's gonna force you to drive more before you even break even. Don't don't do that. Please don't do that. Let me see what you guys are saying in the comments. Giga Buddha says, bro, you tripping. Giga Buddha says, I got a brand new Model Y. I promise you, I'm not the one tripping. What was the total price of the car? What's your car payment? How much money are you making per week? He says, and it's been worth it because I'm making 3 to 4 times what a normal driver makes. I know my market, and the Tesla is way cheaper to run than the Honda Accord hybrid. The Tesla has lowered my expenses by a lot, bro. How much is your car? What's the price of your car? You said you got what was it? Model Y? Let's, I'm gonna go to Tesla.com and see how much a Model Y is. You got brand new too. So in the face of there's so many used cars on the market right now. I'm curious to why you decided to get a brand new one instead of a used one. Financially speaking, objectively speaking, if you're claiming that your Model Y is making you more money and saving you more money than your hybrid Civic, then I think it's also reasonable to assume that paying $20,000 to $30,000 less for a used car, a used Tesla, would also have significantly more savings than getting it brand new. So let's go. You said Model Y. Is this the Model Y? Let's see if we can get it priced out. So lease starting at $379. There's a $7,500 tax credit on it. See, this alone bothers me. I routinely drive more than this, and I would hate to be at a supercharger. Supercharger costs money. In order for you to be saving maximum on the fuel savings, you would have to be charging at home. Superchargers, depending on your vehicle, can be as expensive as gas. Model Y, so it starts, the rear wheel drive is 32, we'll call it 33,000. Which one do you have? You have the long range for 37,000, or maybe the Model Y Performance for 40 grand. There's no response yet, so let's play around a little bit with this. Let's use some AI. Compare the cost of a brand new Model Y to the cost of a $15,000 Prius. Compare the total cost of the car and the cost of fuel per mile. Let's see if that gives us what we want. So the Tesla Model Y electric car, so no gasoline costs. Electricity costs vary depending on location and usage, but on average is estimated to cost around $6 per 100 miles. Used Prius gasoline powered car, assuming an average fuel efficiency of 50 miles per gallon and a gas price of $3.50 per gallon, it would cost around $7 per 100 miles, so $1 more per 100 miles. The Tesla Model Y is significantly more expensive upfront than the used Prius. However, the Model Y has no gasoline costs, which the Prius does. Over time, the fuel savings from the Y could offset the higher initial purchase price, especially if you drive a lot. Let's see how much. Here are some additional factors to consider. All right, so if the Prius costs $7 to fuel every 100 miles, and the Tesla costs $6 to fuel every 100 miles, how many miles would I have to drive to make up for the price difference of a brand new Model Y and a used $15,000 Prius? Unfortunately, information provided doesn't allow for exact calculations of how many miles you need to drive to recoup the price difference. Ugh. Alternative approach. Instead of an exact calculation, we can estimate the payback period based on reasonable assumptions. Model Y price, assuming $55,000, including destination and fees. Prius fuel efficiency, assuming 50 miles per gallon for a used Prius. Gas price, assuming $3.50 per gallon. Electricity costs, assume 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Calculation. The price difference between the Model Y and the Prius is $40,000. The Prius fuel cost per 100 miles, so that would be $3.50 per gallon, multiplied by what? 1 gallon 50 for every 50 miles equals to, so the per mile cost of fuel would be 0.07 for Prius. The Model Y electricity cost for 100 miles, 33 kilowatt per hours would work out to $4.95 per 100 miles. I don't know why it's doing those two differently. The fuel cost per 100 miles. Okay, so this is what we're looking for. Therefore, every 100 miles driven, you save $4.88 by using the Model Y instead of the Prius. The estimated payback period. To recoup the $40,000 price difference, you need to save $40,000. That's not accurate. It's just estimating the actual payback. I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna do the numbers myself, but I know that you are not saving. Okay, here's the best way I can put it. If you have a Prius, you are not spending $40,000 in gas and maintenance. You're just not. Like, you just aren't. And then as with the Tesla, you're gonna be in debt longer. I assume you didn't pay cash for it. So I really would like some responses here. But no responses so far. So I need to make a long video where I go in depth and break down more why Tesla is just not a great car for rideshare. I don't see it. I don't think there's anything anyone can say to me that a new Tesla is better than a used Prius or any used hybrid. So I don't know. Those are my thoughts. You guys let me know what you think, but I'm about to get out of here. 7:00. Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm sorry I got off to a late start because I didn't know my stream wasn't streaming, but I'll catch you guys next week in the next one.